Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam Tyajatyante kalevaram Tam tamevaiti kaunteya Sada tad bhava bhavitaha.
O Kaunteya, Kaunteya means son of Kunti. One goes to whatever object one remembers at the end while leaving the body by constant thought of that object. So, he is elaborating on this principle of as you think, so you become. The previous verse, in verse 5, he said, if you are constantly thinking of me means God, Atman, at the time of death. Now, in verse 5, when he says death, he's not speaking of death of the body, he's speaking of the death of your entire personality, the mind and the intellect. You've purified your entire system of desires and you are constantly thinking of God. What will happen to such a person? He will get to the state of realization, which means no more birth. He doesn't specify that. He talks about rebirth later. Now in verse 6, see, he must have understood the complete look of this lost look on our faces when he speaks of verse 5. He who thinks of me comes to me, we're all out, spaced out. So he quickly comes to our level and he says, whatever object you think of, whatever it is that you think of, at the time of leaving the body, here he specifies, death means leaving the body, which signifies that there will be rebirth. You will get to that. Why? Because of constant thought. Now, in these two verses, he's speaking of death, which is unknown to us. But let's get back to our lives. Even within our lifetime, between birth and death, which is what we know, we don't know what's going to happen after death. During our lifetime, we see this functioning. Every moment of our life, when you move from one experience to the other, this movement is driven by what? Desire. At 6:30, all of us came here. Why? Because we shared the common desire of wanting to study and learn the Gita. Hopefully that's why you've come. Some come because the neighbor has come. But that apart. At 8 o'clock, this desire temporarily is whetted and you move. Where will you go? Wherever the next desire takes you. So some of us may go home. Some others might say, oh, I've had enough. 1.5 hours of Gita, I need to chill out. So you go out for dinner or whatever. Third person goes to a meeting. Oh, various possibilities are there. But what is true is that wherever you go is where your desire takes you. Not just desire, the resultant of all your desires. So what happens at 6:30? It doesn't mean that you don't have other desires. All other desires go into the background and this strong desire to come here shifts the resultant and that's how you're here. Like this, you go on right through your lifetime from experience to experience, driven by desire, driven by the resultant of all your desires put together. Right? Is that not true? Yeah. Now, at the time of death, what happens? You've only discarded the body, but the mind and intellect is still there. So where will you go next? There's no reason to believe that the same principle will not continue. And so, what he's saying is, whatever object one remembers at the end, he is not talking about one single thought at the time of death. What he means is the resultant of all your thoughts, desires, actions, everything put together at that moment is where you will go. In fact, the movement takes place because of that. The movement takes place because the present body, the present environment is not conducive for the fulfillment of that resultant desire, and so therefore it needs a change. Just as at 8 o'clock if you want dinner, this place is not conducive. You can't eat here. So it necessitates a change. Until 8 o'clock, this environment is conducive. So movement doesn't take place as long as these two don't happen. Means, number one, your resultant desire and the present body and environment, there is a disconnect. Therefore, there is movement. So this movement happens during your lifetime and it happens at death also. That's all that he's saying here. So the point is, we are so careless about our thoughts. You entertain thoughts left, right, and center. Most of the thoughts we're not even aware of. If you were aware of the thoughts, if you were aware of your speech, what you say, how you say, with what attitude you say, what kind of thoughts go through your mind, you yourself will be aghast. The number of negative thoughts that go through our mind, the number of wrong attitudes that we have, all this is frightening. Is frightening because when you understand the law of karma, you know that every single thought you're going to have to pay for. Because every single thought determines the resultant. We're very careless. Therefore, the first step is be aware. And how can you be aware? With what are you aware? Intellect. The intellect is aware of the thoughts. And as you become aware of your present thoughts, then there is a commitment to change, to improve the quality of your thoughts. So what you do is fix a goal and work dedicatedly towards a higher goal, a more inclusive goal. And then you find that you are able to overcome your negativities, your faults, without even trying. Because what happens is all your thoughts are resting on the higher, and so the lower falls off. It no longer grips you. So this is what he's talking about. There's a story of a great Mahatma who diligently performed all his spiritual practices, and he was meditating on the banks of a river in the Himalayas, when a hunter came along and shot the mother deer. And the infant, she had just delivered the offspring. So the baby deer was left completely helpless. So this Mahatma, because of all the commotion that took place, he opened his eyes and saw the mother dead and the baby lying there. And so he did what anyone would naturally do, which is take care of the infant deer. But in the process, what happened is, he got attached to that deer. So when he was sitting in meditation, instead of thinking of God, he was thinking of the deer. And so they said that what happened is, when he died, he was on the brink of realization. He had no other thought, no other attachment. But he unnecessarily formed an attachment to the deer. So the story goes, he had to go through one extra birth as a deer and exhaust that before he went to realization. Now, if this can happen to a person like that, what must be happening in our minds? This Pandora's box that is there. It's really frightening. And then when things go wrong in our lives, at least that must be taken as a wake-up call. So instead of getting depressed and crying over it and getting, waiting for others to sympathize with you and give you, self-pity and all the rest of it, what the Gita says is, at least have all right, you've performed negative actions. And the result has come to you. At least have the courage to stand up to it. Don't sit there and get weak-kneed. This is what he's telling Arjuna. Arjuna is faced with a challenge in life like all of us are faced with challenges. The more you think about, this is my challenge and I'm going under, of course you feel sorry for yourself. But look around you and you see other people facing much greater challenges than you. And when you look at them, you begin to understand that you're blessed because you went through much less trauma, much less suffering than many others. And you're grateful for what you've received and you spring back. And you learn from your experiences. You understand that when things go wrong in life, it's because I've thought wrongly in the past, acted wrongly in the past, felt wrongly in the past. Correct that. So these are all wake-up calls. But we don't treat it as a wake-up call. We get further embroiled in the same thing. And that's the problem. So work in harmony with, in obeisance with the law of karma is the message here. And then he concludes in the next verse.